House briefing on Monday. The Duchess, formerly known as Kate Middleton, gave birth to a son on Monday morning, left the London hospital early in the evening holding the prince. Sanders, who has 3 children herself, said, "From one mother to another, I know the reality of being outnumbered can be very scary, but I know that she and the Prince William will continue to be amazing parents." For American Family News, I'm Steve Jordahl.
All of heaven is filled with music, men and women. There are more hymns in the book of Revelation than any other book than the book of Psalms. And when we get to heaven, people say, what are we going to do? We are going to praise God in every conceivable way that is possible.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
Darkness is not an affirmative force. It simply reoccupies the space vacated by the light.
This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio
and Urban Family Talk.
It should be uncomfortable for a believer to live as a hypocrite.
Delivering people out of the bondage of mainstream media
and the philosophies of this world.
God has called you and me to be his ambassadors, even in this dark moment. Let's not miss our moment.
And now, the Hamilton Corner.
Good evening. Welcome to this Monday. Get your week started off right edition of the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. I'm your host, Abraham Hamilton III. I'm 1J down today. Mr. Reed is out, but never fear. Jay Tross is here, holding down the entirety on his lonesome. You cannot forget, we have call screening for us today. Cedra better act like you know you need her, who will be screening the calls for us today. It is a great day, great time to be with you. I trust and pray that you all had a wonderful weekend this weekend, that you were able to gather with the saints wherever you may be in the world. I know last week we had a Hamilton Corner listener all the way listening in Trinidad and Tobago. And we had to say Tobago right because we weren't saying it right. We had to put some respect on the island's name. We had to get it right. Yeah, I trust you had a great weekend. I have to tell you, I had a tremendous weekend hanging out with my family. And I have to tell you guys, guys, I have 5 children. I have a 2-year-old daughter. I have 3 boys and 2 girls. And my 2-year-old daughter, she's 2 going on 32. People at church call her sister missionary. And it's so funny because we're out with the children, and she has now this is the 2-year-olds. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 7-month-old. And the 2-year-old has taken it upon herself to be the supervisor of the children. She walks around, all right, make sure you guys are all together, and it's just hilarious to watch. And I have to tell you, one of the things I enjoy is to see that all of the children, and they come from my wife and I think I'm pretty sure about that, right? They come from my wife and I, but they are so different. They are so different. Their personalities are different. Their love languages are different. Their learning styles are different. But it's just a joy to watch them. And I just consider it a great privilege to be a dad. And it is my prayer, my earnest prayer. I even was talking to Jeff about this over the weekend. No matter all of the things I do publicly, my first commitment is to my family. And it would be sinful for me to be a public success and a private failure. That's why every time I come on this program and I say that I'm speaking to you guys as you're making your way from your part-time jobs to your full-time jobs, I mean that. We must never forget that the calling to ministry in God's kingdom begins in Jerusalem. Family is first, not merely in terms of natural priority. If you even look at the qualifications for leadership in God's church, most of the qualifications turn on how leadership in the family is conducted, how a man conducts himself in the home. That is not a superfluous listing there. That is gives an example of what the Lord's priority, what he expects our priorities to be. And you can say whatever you want, but you will never be able to out-legislate and out-church flawed family life. Won't do it. Won't get it done. You could have the best policies in the world. You could have, your church could rock and roll. You can, lean with it and rock with it all day long. And if the families are not solidified, founded upon the rock, it doesn't matter how great your church is. because the reality is the biblical prescription for discipling little ones, it is the parents' responsibility. And so it would encourage you, man, not to allow your part-time jobs, your income-generating pursuits outside of the home to overwhelm and consume your full-time job, which is being a husband, a father, a wife, a mother, being a brother or a sister. Those are our full-time jobs. And let me say this while I'm on that point. If you're looking for a conference to go to where the issues concerning marriage and family and living will be discussed as a first priority, never fear, Urban Family is here. Urban Family Talk is hosting its first Marriage, Family, and Life Conference August 17th and 18th in Tupelo, Mississippi, at Hope Church in Tupelo, Mississippi, where these issues will be discussed. By God's grace, I have the privilege to be a part of this particular conference. Ryan Baumberger from Radiance Foundation, many of you know him as a pro-life warrior. Dr. Clarence Schuler, who is a marriage and family minister and counselor, will be there, as well as the entire slate of Urban Family Talk hosts will be there August 17th and 18th. And you have early bird registration available to you up until May 1st. So I encourage you to go to urbanfamilytalk.com and listen. The conference is for everybody. There is no particular demographic that is the target. Okay, it's open to everybody. And let me let you in on this too. There will be a conference within the conference for children ages 4 to 12 years old, where the objective will be to provide some basic foundational components to allow them to grasp the faith that they have. Believe it or not, young believers are still believers. And they need the same things you need to stand. I was talking to somebody lately who said, if you think peer pressure is a phenomenon that only that's only a problem for children, I got another thing for you. What do you think the unwillingness in Congress to deal with the filibuster is, other than peer pressure? It's peer pressure. I've seen it in courtrooms. I've seen it in the legal profession. You see it all along. Peer pressure is peer pressure. They may have a different vernacular and an expansive or less expansive vocabulary, but they need the same things you need to stand. So come on out to the conference. It's going to be a tremendous, tremendous time, and I look forward to see you there. I love to get to hug necks and shake hands of the people when they come out. Now, I'm going to begin now in Daniel chapter 6, and I talked longer than I planned to talk, so I guess I'll just have to hit this quickly, and I'll make comments along the way. Daniel chapter 6, verses 1 through 13 is what I'm going to talk about this morning to kind of set up the program, And the thing that's important to note here, where we are in Daniel 6, the reality is that this is 66 years following chapter 1. So when we're looking at Daniel in chapter 6, we're looking at the elder statesman Daniel, that he would more than likely be at this point in his late 70s or early 80s. We know in Daniel chapter 1 that Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were referred to as the Yereled in Hebrew, which literally means young boys in the preteen to teenage years, somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. And so when we see Daniel here at 66, in chapter 6, that's how we know he's in his either late 70s or early 80s. And I'll begin here. Verse 1 in Daniel chapter 6. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be throughout the whole kingdom, and over them 3 high officials, of whom Daniel was one, to whom these satraps would give an account, so that the king might suffer no loss. So let me explain this. So this is Darius now. The kingdom is transitioned from Babylonian rule primarily. King Belshazzar is dead now. Darius is coming in, ushering the ruler of the Medes and the Persians. And they create leadership under Darius. Now, in the previous chapter, contrary to the first 3 chapters of Daniel, Daniel's leadership and his authority in the Babylonian Empire has faded to where he kind of become an also-ran until the end of Belshazzar's reign. You can check that out in Daniel chapter 5. You can check that on your own. Well, now Darius has come in, and Daniel is now being elevated because people think Daniel has this consistent position of political authority in the Babylonian Empire. But that's not the case. It ebbed and it flowed. But now he's elevated once again. And this is important to note because the position that he has, there's 120 satraps. Then you have 3 high officials. The satraps are entrusted with collecting tribute from all over the Babylonian Empire. Okay, the three high officials have to, the 120 satraps report to these three high officials. Now, why is that important? Because more than likely, you'll see, well, let me read some more, then you'll see why I'm saying that. Man, I got to hurry up. Verse 3, then this Daniel became distinguished above all the other high officials and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. Then the high officials and satraps sought to find a ground for complaint against Daniel with regard to the kingdom, but they could find no ground for complaint or any fault because he was faithful, and no error or fault was found in him. Then these men said, we shall not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. Oh, brethren and brothers and sisters, would that be said about us? Now, more than it's possible that the impetus for these high officials and the satraps to conspire against Daniel because of jealousy solely. But what's more likely, because these guys really are collecting taxes. Think about the IRS. They're collecting taxes all over the Babylonian Empire. They probably were frustrated in their desire to skim and steal for themselves. Because you see, they have to all account to these three high officials, one of whom includes Daniel, because of his integrity and his honesty and his upright walk before the Lord. They probably were upset because they can't steal on Daniel's watch. So they figure, so it's likely a combination of jealousy and their desire to steal. So they figure we got to get him out of here so that we can do what we want to do. But they realize there's nothing we can do to ensnare him unless it deals with the law of his God. Can you imagine a man having started out as a Yeled and now he is in his elder statesman role and for all of this time has this robust, consistent witness of faithfulness before Babylonians in a foreign land? Could that be said about you and I? Based on how we conduct our business? Based on how we conduct ourselves in our personal lives? And you think about all the ways that men stumble and fall. There was no, my man Will was talking to me. We were talking about this earlier. Will Addison, Director of Communications with Urban Family. Not communications, the general manager of Urban Family. Golly, the director of Urban Family. I'm saying it all wrong. But imagine the things that men normally are ensnared by. There were no bribes. They couldn't bribe him. He wasn't chasing money. They couldn't throw, loose women at him. That wouldn't move him. The only thing that they could conclude is that because of his faithfulness to his God, we have to conspire some scheme to ensnare him there. Oh, could that be said about you and I? I'm telling you, what a convicting testimony that here he is at this latter point, that's how faithful that he is. And it's also a statement that, contrary to popular belief, that we don't have to fade in potency in our commitment to Christ over time. That as the years go by, we actually become stronger and stronger and more faithful and more committed, so that even in our 70s and in our 80s, we are found with a consistent prayer life. We're found with consistent integrity. We're found with a powerful witness that the naysayers can't even say nay about. Let me keep going. Good Lord. Verse 6, then these high officials and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. All the high officials of the kingdom, the prefects, the satraps, the counselors, and the governors, are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever makes petition to any god or man for 30 days, except to you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document, so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document and injunction. So we all know what the scheme is, how they came up with the plot. Look at verse 10. Not before, not after waiting around. Verse 10 says, when Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he paused and considered what he would do. Nope, that's not what the Bible says. He went to try to find his friends and say, man, what are we going to do? Because this new law is going to prohibit us from being able to worship our Lord. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house. He went to his house where he had his windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. Oh, brothers and sisters, we have to see it. See, Daniel had developed this habit of praying towards Jerusalem, most likely fulfilling the decrees made by Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 8, verses 46 through 50, as to what should happen when the Lord exiles his people. And Solomon said, Lord, would you hear the cries of your people, that when they are exiled in a foreign land, if they get their minds right and start to cry out to you then? And it had become Daniel's habit. 3 times a day, he would cry out towards Jerusalem. So even after learning under penalty of a lion's den, that his prayer life could get him incarcerated, he doesn't pause one moment. And the question has to be, why doesn't he pause? Because Daniel's perception of the God of the Hebrews was more impressing upon him than even the consequences of a lion's den. See, the wicked conspirators didn't realize that between law signed by Darius and lion's den sentence, that there's an intervening factor called the God who shuts the mouths of the lions. And the thing that I want to leave us with in this last moment is that here he is in Babylon in a high and lofty position, yet his heart is still bent toward Jerusalem. My question for you and I is that though we're living in this earth, do our hearts long for eternity? Because the longing for eternity is what will enable us to not be ensnared by the temptations of this life.
The influence of media is so very powerful over a person.
American Family Association and the family of Anna Bright want to warn you about the Netflix program 13 Reasons Why.
I really feel in my heart with all my soul that that show contributed to her passing.
After binge-watching Season 1 of 13 Reasons Why, 14-year-old Anna Bright committed suicide in the same manner depicted on the show.
To portray suicide, first of all, as an option is not a good thing. To portray it graphically, it leaves you vulnerable to the enemy's attack, which I think it definitely did for our daughter.
She took a permanent solution to a temporary situation.
Help protect our teens by signing the AFA petition urging Netflix to pull Season 1 and cancel the upcoming Season 2 of 13 Reasons Why. You can see Anna's story and sign the petition at afa.net. That's afa.net.
A Moment of Truth with Gary Bryden, Executive Director of the Association of Independent Methodists.
On March 18, 1837, Grover Cleveland was born. After serving as mayor of Buffalo, New York, and governor of New York, he became the 22nd President of the United States. He closed his inaugural address in March of 1885 with the following: "And let us not trust to human efforts alone, but humbly acknowledging the power and goodness of Almighty God, who presides over the destiny of nations, and who has at all times been revealed in our country's history, let us invoke His aid and His blessings upon our labors. Let us return to the roots of our nation by embracing Judeo-Christian biblical values once again."
The Association of Independent Methodists, like-minded congregations doing together what can't be done separately. Visit aim2020.com.
Here's Pastor Jeff Shreve with From His Heart Ministries.
How many people come to church and they're chained to a bitter spirit and all sorts of problems, chained to greed and selfishness? Even when they want to break free, they can't seem to break free. Worship Him and praise Him and let Him remove the chains.
Learn to break the chains forever through Christ. Join Pastor Jeff Shreve on From His Heart, weeknights at 6 Central, here on American Family Radio.
You wish you could stop thinking about it, but you can't. It never quite leaves your thoughts. Even in the joyful moments, it's there. The sadness, shame, and sorrow. You know you can't go on like this, so don't. Phone the International Helpline for Abortion Recovery at 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who's already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
Shining light into the darkness. This is the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
No, I just consider myself, I was, like I said, in that cage, and I had the opportunity to either act or not act. And I chose to act because either way, in my mind, I saw if I don't act, it's death. If I do act, I have a stronger possibility of living than just letting him come through the door. So I just see myself like as a regular guy. Yeah.
I see myself like as a regular guy. Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here on American Family Radio. and Urban Family Talk. That was the voice of the name of a man that should be, at a minimum, shouted all across our country today. It was James Shaw Jr. Many of you may have heard the reports already, but early Sunday morning, about 3:30 Sunday morning, you had a murderer, quite frankly. A murderer who happened upon a Waffle House restaurant, and he was armed. He shot and killed 2 people outside of the Waffle House restaurant. Then he moved toward the entrance of the Waffle House restaurant, shooting and killing 2 more people inside of the Waffle House restaurant and wounding at least 7 others. And James Shaw Jr., who's the voice of the man you just heard, was inside of the Waffle House. And in his interviews, he said he saw the silhouette of the man coming from the parking lot, saw the car pull up, saw him get out, noticed when he started shooting. In fact, he personally was grazed by one of the bullets, shot by the murderer. And when the murderer entered the Waffle House restaurant, he paused. He didn't know if the gun jammed, or he stopped to do something with the gun, and he saw that as his opportunity to act. He said he thought in his own mind that I can either sit here in this seat and I'll likely die, or I could do something and I may die, but I at least will have a chance. And when the shooter stopped shooting for a moment, James Shaw Jr. pounced. Bum rushed him is what we call it back on the block. Bum rushed the shooter. Literally took the gun out of his hands. I mean, burned his own hand and grabbing the barrel, takes the gun from him and throws it. And today, he is heralded as a hero. Rightfully so. Because of where we are in our country, of course, you're going to have the conversations about gun control, which would be very, very ridiculous, because it turns out this 29-year-old murderer had actually been arrested in Washington, trespassing in a restricted area in the White House, in where at that time he was armed with multiple firearms, and those weapons were confiscated from him then in Washington. Which would let us know, hello, confiscating weapons is probably not the smartest thing, But this James Shaw Jr., he did this. And he said that he just followed his instincts. He followed his instincts. He did this, and he was unarmed. So you have a man with a gun being disarmed by a man without a gun. And James Shaw said that his episode in disarming this shooter didn't keep him from going to church with his father Sunday morning, a few hours after having disarmed this murderer. And he says that he sees himself as a regular guy. I know you see yourself that way, my man, but I'm here to tell you, you're a hero. You're a hero. Because law enforcement on the scene unanimously concluded that had not James Shaw Jr. acted, had he not acted, the death toll would have been much higher. Would have been much higher. And I'm going to make a point that, you probably won't hear it in other places. I don't know. Maybe you will. But what I'm hoping we get from this, there are lots of other lessons that could be taken from this. Because when I see James Shaw Jr., this is what I see in my heart and my mind about America. That is America. That is America. When the chips are down, when things get hot, America rises to the occasion. America creates a Cajun Navy when there's flooding in Baton Rouge. America cares for each other. That is America. That is in the heat of the moment, in the throes of the intense moment where it's literally life or death. America says, no, we're going to live, buddy. Oh, you may have a gun and I don't, but guess what? We're going to live. James Shaw Jr. said that he was considering his own death. And if he sat there, he was going to die. But the point that I'm going to make now, that I hope to make, that I don't know if you'll hear it in other places. I'm hoping that James Shaw Jr., and I don't know if it will happen, maybe it won't, but I want to make this point. I'm hoping that James Shaw Jr.'s example will become an incentive for us to stop feminizing our boys and our men. Because you never know when you might need somebody to bum rush a shooter when he's unarmed. God has made men and women distinct for a reason. And that is not to say that a woman couldn't do a similar thing, but can we be honest about something? There's probably some reasoning for there being a distinction in our biological makeup that the world is running, 100 miles an hour to try to completely obliterate. That we probably should stop trying to make boys soft as whoopee cushions. To where we recognize, men are good for something. One of them is protecting people and things. James said he acted instinctively. And when he said that, I said, ain't that something? Ain't that something? It's kind of like my dad telling me that when I go places, when I should catch the bus from the Lower Ninth Ward to New Orleans East to go to school, they say, Abe, look out for your little brother. Make sure nothing happens to your little brother. To where you are introduced to the realm of protecting things, being a part of what God has made you to be. And it's unfortunate that we have to have these basic conversations, but folks, common sense ain't too common these days. We need to let boys be boys. Stop with the foolishness of saying, well, I'm going to raise my child in a gender-neutral phenomenon and I'm going to let him decide what he wants to be. Okay, boo-boo. First name, last name, da fool. That's ridiculous. I'm going to tell you something. I believe 100% that you have people raising boys to be anything other than boys and men. That's child abuse. You see these celebrities. I saw a picture somewhere else where this actress is raising her son as a girl. I said, that's child abuse. That's child abuse. And we have these people doing these things and acting like it's okay. I'm truly hopeful that James Shaw Jr.'s example will let boys get sticks again and run around in the yard to where they can pick up rocks and skip them across lakes. And this is not an indictment to women, of course not. And anybody want to come with the jazz talking about women are strong, listen. Do I have to remind y'all I'm from the Ninth Ward? Do I have to remind y'all about who Mrs. Hamilton is? I've shared the stories how my mother grew up in the Desire Projects in New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you. Celeste commented on the Facebook stream that is Charlize Theron. That's child abuse. And the thing that's so, man, the Bible tells us, professing to be wise, they become fools. And then you add on to the scripture the wisdom of the forefathers with thanks be to God that America is not an absolute democracy, that we are a constitutional republic. They said within their wisdom, understanding that an absolute democracy is mobocracy that soon annihilates itself. And that we have people that are so smart, and it just, I'm just a simple guy. That the very same crowd that would accuse Christians of being anti-science are the same ones who would deny biological science to say, I'm going to let little one be a girl. On what planet? On what planet? This is insane, guys. We need boys to be boys. Nobody needs to raise boys to be brawlers and to be those who love, fighting and things of that nature. But they need to be told, hey, you're a boy. One of the things that God has called you to do is be a protector. So you probably need to know how to do that. Boys need to throw rocks. Boys need to run around. Boys need to pick up sticks, to swing sticks. Boys need to utilize the things that God has hardwired into us so that we can be prepared for when murderers show up to shoot up Waffle Houses, that we have instincts to respond to. Now, I don't know if you're going to hear that on the Talking Snake media, but you'll hear it here in the corner. And I think that's why some of you come to the corner, because we do stuff in the corner that they don't do on the other places. And I really, truly hope that, listen, there's this phenomenon you see there. This is the era of participation trophies. And you had this soccer league. I saw it in one of these regressive places to where they don't even have a ball. They don't let the kids play with balls because they don't want anybody's feelings to be hurt because they lose. What? Don't give my boy a participation trophy? I remember, listen, I'm just going to let y'all into the Hamilton household for a minute. I played sports growing up. My wife didn't play sports. And one of the things we talked about, my wife and I, she said, Abe, I don't know what to do if Christian, our oldest son, what if he loses? That would just hurt my heart so much so. And I said, babe, that's why God created families to consist of men and women. Because you know what he needs to learn? That there's sometimes life will try to punch you in your nose. There's sometimes life will hit you in such a way that it'll feel like you lost the taekwondo tournament. My son does taekwondo. And the next question, because the thing is that the punch in the nose and the current blow doesn't define you. But you know what could define you? How do you respond? I said, babe, this is a great opportunity for our boy to learn a real lesson about life. If he wins, we celebrate him and the diligence that he employed and the training that he employed so that he could develop the certain level of mastery of the skills that are necessary to succeed in the competition. And you know what? If he loses, we get the opportunity to tell him, you know what, son? Look at those people on the podium. The fact that they're on the podium gives an indication that they have invested something that you have not. So the question now becomes, little man, what are you going to do? Are you content with being off of the podium and watching other people celebrate something you profess to love? Or are you going to use this as motivation? And I start talking about things that inspired me as a kid, as a child. I was inspired by Michael Jordan not making the varsity in the sophomore year. Now, we saw what Michael Jordan became in the sport of basketball, but if you ask him and many others, he'll say the thing that defined his hunger and his drive were those moments when he lost. And so all I'm saying is I hope that James Shaw Jr.'s example is a moment for us as a country to pause and reflect. Man, I didn't plan on talking about this long. But the part of Jason laughing at me like, yeah, what you going? Y'all got to know, Jason and I have been rolling together for quite some time. So he kind of knows when I get going, right? But I'm praying and hoping that this will be a moment for our nation to pause and reflect and to realize, you know what, man? We need men in this society. We need men. We need men to be men distinctly. We need men to be men and celebrated for being men, not like applauding them, but affirming the fact that he made them both male and female. That there are distinct components that he has invested in maleness and femaleness that if we obliterate it in society, we will be worse for it. We will be worse for it. In a moment where it was a literal life and death moment, James Shaw Jr. said his instincts provoked him to respond. All right, I'm going to put a pin in that for a moment. Man, I used a whole segment. The next thing I was going to talk about, I don't know if I have time to do it. I may go into a little bit more in the third segment, and then we'll take some calls. But in case you were wondering, your favorite crazy Uncle Bernie, he's at it again. Crazy Uncle Bernie has released a new plan, you know, because, of course, in my opinion, this is an indication that he's running for president in 2020. But he's released a new plan to guarantee jobs for every American citizen. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It includes, let me explain it a little bit. Sanders has an outline that calls for the government to fund hundreds of projects in categories such as infrastructure, education, and environment that will result in every American being able to get a job that pays $15 an hour at a minimum with full health care benefits or receive job training. Now, what made me literally laugh out loud when I read this, is that in addition to this outline for the job plan, Bernie Sanders' plan also includes dividing the country into 12 separate districts each with a specialized area of industry that would develop service projects and major infrastructure job plans, which they would then forward to the Department of Labor for approval. And so you know what made me laugh out loud? With his 12 districts, I also wonder if Bernie Sanders is planning to get one person from each district to come to fight to the death on national television. Does he realize this sounds like right out of the Hunger Games? And I doubt he read the novel. But I'm sure somebody on his staff had to see the movie and say, no, Bernie, your hair is already wild. You don't want to divide the country into 12 districts. That's going to let the people know that you really are crazy, Bernie. That didn't stop him. 12 districts. And I wonder if he's going to also include in his plan a reaping for people to come to fight to the death on national television. Crazy Uncle Bernie, folks. You got to love him. No, you don't. Get him out of here.
Did you know George Washington, the father of our country, he loved being at home at Mount Vernon. In fact, he said he'd rather be at home at Mount Vernon than dining with all the princes and royalty of Europe. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. We're going to Mount Vernon on our Spiritual Heritage Tour in September, and we'd love to have you join us for this very special time. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation will be with us as we go all over our nation's capital. We'll go to the Capitol, the Library of Congress, the World War II Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, all the places you want to see in our nation's capital. We'll see that, but we'll also go to Mount Vernon. Now, for all the information on this September tour, including a side trip to Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown, you can check it out at spiritualheritagetours.com. spiritualheritagetours.com for all the information on our September tours. And we'll see you then.
Beware the New Apostolic Reformation. This is David Wheaton, host of the Christian Worldview. Youth lying on graves of deceased spiritual leaders to soak up their anointing, claiming healing powers like the first century apostles. According to Costi Hinn's new book, Defining Deception, these are just two of the practices taking place at the vanguard of the New Apostolic Reformation movement, Bethel Church in Redding, California, led by Pastor Bill Johnson and popularized by their worship band, Jesus Culture. Paul warned the church in Rome, keep your eye on those who cause dissensions and hindrances contrary to the teaching which you learned, and turn away from them. Hear an interview with Costi Hinn at thechristianworldview.org. This weekend, Nancy Piercy joins us to discuss what's driving the moral revolution.
Listen to The Christian Worldview with David Wheaton, Saturday mornings at 8 Central on American Family Radio.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes with news and commentary next. The editors of GQ magazine have named the Holy Bible as one of the most overrated books in history. The Good Book ranked number 12 on their list of 21 books you don't have to read before you die. The editors called God's Word repetitive, self-contradictory, foolish, and ill-intentioned. They say it's rated highly by those who live by the Bible but have not actually read the Bible. And I suspect the editors count themselves among those who have not read the book. Otherwise, they would have known the Bible documents the greatest story ever told, a story about love and sacrifice and redemption. The best-selling book of all time, more than 5 billion copies sold. That's according to Guinness World Records. And far be it from me to tell the pompous literary erudites at GQ magazine what books to peruse, but based on my reading of the Gospels, they might want to read the Bible before they kick the bucket. I'm Todd Starnes.
The Hamilton Corner podcast and one-minute commentaries are available at afr.net and urbanfamilytalk.com. Back to the Hamilton Corner on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back to the Hamilton Corner here in American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We will open the phone lines to this segment if you want to be a part of the program to talk about anything we've raised in the conversation today. You are welcome to do so by calling 888-589-8840. The number to call again is 888-589-8840. Before we went to the break, I was talking about Bernie Sanders. Everybody needs health care. And I was somewhat laughing about his plan to create 12 districts. And just to be clear, or to add some more insight to this particular conversation, this is not something that's new. to the world. It's very possible that Bernie Sanders has copied his economic plan somewhat from the former USSR, because they divided Russia and the surrounding nations that made up the Soviet bloc into 11 separate economic districts, and China has done a similar thing. So I was kind of mocking about the dystopian Hunger Games. But do we really want Bernie provided communism in America? I mean, really? You know what? And I know Bernie's going to run for president in 2020. At least it seems like it so far, or at least he's pining for some position should some alternative regressive run. But this is crazy. So I mean, that's your uncle, not mine, Bernie Sanders. Another thing I wanted to raise, another topic, another story here, that there was a professor, a criminology professor by the name of Gary Kleck from Florida State University, and he is known for conducting surveys to discuss defensive gun usage, and his theory has long been that guns are used far more frequently in defensive efforts than they are actually used to perpetrate criminality. And he has long held that position. Well, what did you know? Professor Kleck has been able to unearth a study created by the United States government Center for Disease and Control Prevention from the 1990s, 1996 to 1998 to be specific, where the CDC actually conducted a study that, in Professor Kleck's opinion, that the goal originally was to refute his research, because Professor Kleck produced his own research in 1995 that said that guns are used anywhere between 1 million to 2.2 million times a year in defensive maneuvers to prohibit crime and to stop crime. It was his notion that the CDC probably conducted their research in an effort to refute his position. But you know what? Well, let me say this. The CDC did their own study, but they didn't release the results to the public. ¿Por qué no? Why not? They did not release their results of their study because it turns out the CDC study showed that Professor Kleck's quantitative analysis concerning the defensive gun usages was actually less than they were actually used. It turns out, based on this lost CDC study that was conducted from 1996 to 1998, that there were 2.46 million defensive gun uses in each year. And as a result, Professor Kleck has revised his research and has written a new paper titled, "What Do CDC Surveys Say About the Frequency of Defensive Gun Uses?" In his paper, he commented on the high quality of the CDC's research and references its sample size of more than 5,000 adults, actually more than 5,400 adults, where the statistics as reflected in the CDC study, it actually shows that guns were used defensively by victims about 3.6 times as often as they were used offensively by criminals. Could that be the reason why the CDC didn't allow their research to be popularized? What would that do for this current gun control debate that we're having if the country knew that guns are actually used almost 3.5 times more frequently in defensive actions than they are used offensively by criminals? Do you think we'd have massive gun control walkouts by students? Oh, by the way, the protests were majority not students. We found that out. You read that. You heard that report, right? That only about a third of the people at the protest, the gun control protests, were actually students. 2/3 of them were adults. Well, I tell you, if you want to be a part of the program, we are taking your calls right now. And the number to call is 888-589-8840. That number again is 888-589-8840. Anything we discuss. You want to talk about Daniel. You want to talk about the Waffle House shooting being thwarted by James Shaw Jr. You want to talk about Bernie Sanders and his nutty financial plans, economic plans. Or you want to talk about Professor Glick and the CDC's gun control study. Oh, not so much gun control, probably supporting the Texas notion of gun control, which is what? Dun, 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 dun. You use both hands. To the phone lines we go. First in North Carolina, where Teresa is on the line. Teresa, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I would like to commend Mr. Shaw Jr. For what he did and the selflessness of his act.
Yes.
And thank Mr. and Mrs. Shaw for having Mr. Shaw Jr. and teaching him such things.
Yes.
And I'd like you to take really good care of yourself because you're doing something that really needs to be done. God is using you to speak truth all over the place, and I thank you for it.
Oh, Teresa, thank you so much for your call and your comments. Wow, I wasn't expecting that one, Jason. I wasn't expecting that one. But thank you very much for your call, Teresa. And I would ask for you and those who are listening to pray for me. Really, I really covet your prayers. I really approach what I'm doing here through this program and through everything I do here at American Family Association as ministry. Absolutely, absolutely do so. So thank you for your call and your kind, very, very kind words. Really hit me in the heart there. Back to the phone lines. We go next to West Virginia, where Charles is on the line. Charles, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Abe, for taking my call. I want to say, first of all, my wife and I enjoy your show immensely, and we look forward to it every evening, as well as we do most of the AFR radio shows. We've been listening to them for years. My comment is about the shooter in the Waffle House. Sandy Rios made a point this morning on her show that the shooter was white and 29, and the fellow that took the gun away was black and 29. And her point was, evil knows no color.
That's a fact.
Evil is colorblind.
That's right. Oh, Charles, you're absolutely right. Evil is colorblind. You know, I say all the time on this program, if you listen to it, you know I say it all the time, that there's no such thing as multiple races of human beings. The consistent allusion to the concept of race is in and of itself a reaffirmation of the demonic lie that has been successful in dividing the United States of America, because it's built on the presumption that if there are multiple races of human beings, there actually are subhuman species as indicated, subhuman races as indicated by a darker skin color. So by our continual reference to people by races, that is a biological falsity. I mean, the scientific community is finally caught up to what the Lord already told us in his word, that race is a made-up construct. So you won't hear me talking about people in terms of races. Ethnicity is real. It's referred to as ethnos in scripture, but race is manufactured. So anybody who would like to continually divide people according to this false notion of race, or to make qualitative assumptions and judgments about people based on skin color, my friend, you are engaged in what the Bible refers to as the sin of partiality. And the Bible has already told us, and I said this before, that if you want to talk about oppression, the concept of oppression goes all the way back to the garden, where when you have the very descendants of those who are handcrafted by the Lord himself, talking about Cain and Abel, where one will bash his other brother in the head with a rock. Evil, sin, is just that. Evil and sin. It has nothing to do with the color of anybody's skin. And the quicker, and then I want to add this to the conversation, the quicker that we as the body of Christ get to the place to where we have worked out the discussions of people based on multiple races of human beings out of our vernacular, where we live based on the principle that we all come from one blood. And I've even heard people say, well, the issue is not whether or not there are multiple races of human beings, Abe. The issue is how we treat one another based on our perceptions of skin color. I say, yeah, but if we can take the power from the popular conversations of race, that would be a huge step toward the direction to where we will be able to say now, because you know that it is biblically, biologically, and scientifically demonstrable there's no such thing as multiple races of human beings, that it would help people feel very dumb to then go forward and to try to evaluate and to make value judgments and value assessments about people based on something that's superficial and topical as skin color. We as the body of Christ have to strip the power from that. And we should lead in saying there's no such thing as multiple races of human beings. It's one race. It's called human. If you're not a human, you're an animal. And by the way, that I don't even like to use the term Homo sapiens, because that's also a concept that is based on saying that humans are just another type of animal amongst the entire panoply of animals. No, we're not animals. We're made in the image of God, the image and likeness of God, that he made them both male and female, that we are bearers and carriers of the Imago Dei. Those types of conversations are life-giving to our society, but continuing to build narratives and have dialogues that are literally embroiled and oozed and twisted and contorted in a lie, folks, that's not going to help us move forward. Back to the phone lines we go. Next to Arkansas, where Jake is on the line. Jake, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
Yes, sir. I just went across you guys' station this year, and it's been a very inspiring to me because I'm a minister up here in Beebe, Arkansas.
Praise God. Thank you for that.
The thing of it is, those Bernie wants people to vote for him because he tells people what they want to hear, but he's not telling people that he's going to rob them.
Yeah.
That, you know, he's a robber. They're all robbers. So, and all those politicians, they need to throw all of them out and start all over because it's all corrupt.
Thank you for your call, Jake. Jake, you make a great point. When Bernie is talking about his plan to you get a job, $15 minimum wage, universal health care, Bernie ain't talking about the price tag. And I'll never forget, Bernie was interviewed by Jake Tapper, who is not known for being a stalwart on conservative fiscal conservatism. He said, Bernie, if single payer health care is what all that is cracked up to be, why can you get it passed in Vermont, homie? Could it be that y'all didn't have enough money to do it? And while we're on the topic, Bernie, California, the regressive capital of the nation, why couldn't they get it passed? Because it ain't enough money. And Bernie said, wait a second, Jake. Wait a second, Jake. And he hit the nail on the head. In order to have the panacea that Bernie Sanders creates, we will be held up with the I'll call it the political equivalent to having a stick up in a back alley. Every time they start talking about universal payer health, single payer health care, universal health care, jobs for everybody, you should grab your wallets. They're going for your wallet again, Jay. You should. Back to the phone lines. We go next to Tennessee, where Martin is on the line. Martin, thank you for calling the Hamilton Corner. Welcome to the program.
How you doing, Abraham?
Doing excellent. Martin, how are you, sir?
I just recently started listening to you. I like what you're saying. I think you're dead on about the emasculation of the American male. I'd like to offer a suggestion. Read the book Propaganda by Edward D. Bernays. He was commissioned by Rockefeller back, I believe, in 1928. It was the playbook that totalitarian regimes have used to weaken the population so they could take them over, and that is exactly what is happening right now with the emasculation of the American male and the feminization of the male, and also they're using all these chemicals too to screw up these kids coming up. They don't know if they're male or female, and it is just disgusting. And I'm really glad that you're pointing this out. And God's going to hold the Christian male accountable. If we sit on our tails, he's going to have something to say.
Thank you, Martin, for your comments. We're going to go really quickly to James in North Carolina. James, you have 30 seconds. Welcome to the program.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, Bernie's just handing you a line of mess. It's already been accomplished as far as dividing this nation into regions. It was done under Executive Order number 11649 in 1972 by President Nixon.
Thank you, James. I'm not sure exactly where you're going in terms of that being with it being divided. I'm not sure how it relates to Bernie wanting the 12th economic districts, but I will tell you this. the last two, both of you are both right on, the last two callers, because Bernie is handing you a line. If you think that we could have all of the stuff that Bernie Sanders is talking about with the crushing debt that we have right now, I got another thing for you.
The views and opinions